Welcome, dear listeners, to the Softly Spoken Science Podcast. I'm your host, the Softly Spoken Science Nerd, bringing you bedtime stories calculated to raise your knowledge level. This podcast is dedicated to the belief that a good calm science talk will put you right to sleep. If you feel like this might be the case, hit like and subscribe now, and tap the little bell to be notified about the next video. Tonight we are returning to the Dinosaur Society's Dinosaur Encyclopedia by Don Lessem and Donald Glut. This book was published just after we knew dinosaurs were warm-blooded, just before we knew they had feathers, in the year 1993. In this episode, we will review encyclopedia entries from Genyodectes through Kentrosaurus, discussing dinosaur evolution, as well as updating you with more science since 1993. Genyodectes serus. This carnivore, named in 1901, is known only from brittle pieces of a skull found in southeastern Argentina. The teeth in the lower jaw are small. Some features of the skull show similarities to Carnotaurus, a large carnivore of the same region that had unusually short arms. Gryposaurus notabilis. This duck-billed dinosaur had a large, narrow, deep skull with highly arched nostrils. Its most distinctive feature was its hump of nasal bone. In life, this bone bump was probably covered with skin. It may have been used as a club and flushed with color or otherwise distinguished during courtship or dominance battles with its own kind. Gryposaurus is one of the few dinosaurs for which fossilized skin impressions have been found, giving us a better idea of how this dinosaur looked in life. These skin prints show smooth, polygonal scales less than a half centimeter in diameter on the neck, sides, and abdomen. It also appears to have had cone-shaped plates on its tail, about 1.3 centimeters in diameter and spaced 5.2 to 6.8 centimeters apart. For almost half a century, Gryposaurus was regarded as being the same animal as Critosaurus, found in the San Juan Basin of New Mexico. They have now been distinguished by their tooth structure as different species, though not all researchers agree with that distinction. Hadrosaurus foulkii. Hadrosaurus is a historic, though average-sized, hadrosaur. It belongs to the Hadrosaurine subfamily, those with flat heads. Hadrosaurus was the fifth dinosaur named in North America, and the first dinosaur in the world known from a nearly complete skeleton. In 1958, large bones were excavated from a marl pit on a farm in Haddonville, New Jersey. The remains were taken to the Philadelphia Academy of Natural Sciences. Scientist Joseph Leidy noted several similarities in the teeth to those of Iguanodon and assumed correctly that they were closely related. At the time, however, Iguanodon was incorrectly believed to be a rhinoceros-like animal that ran on all fours. With better skeletal material, Leidy formulated a more accurate reconstruction of a dinosaur. Leidy believed that Hadrosaurus was a mostly amphibious animal that spent some time browsing on land, maintaining a kangaroo-like posture, resting on its hind legs and tail. Leidy's image of Hadrosaurus, while inaccurate, pioneered the modern view of most dinosaurs as animals that moved on two legs with an upright posture. Haplocanthosaurus priscus. Haplocanthosaurus is the most primitive sauropod yet discovered in North America. This animal, the size of two school buses, had solid, single-spined vertebrae and a short neck and tail. Though Haplocanthosaurus has been known for nearly a century, its enormous dimensions were only more recently established. Two well-preserved specimens of Haplocanthosaurus were discovered in 1901 near Canyon City, Colorado. John Bell Hatcher described the larger of the two. He recognized its primitive nature, including the simple spines on its vertebrae, which did not branch as they did in other North American sauropods. Another, less complete skeleton was found in 1954 in the same area by the Cleveland Museum of Natural History. This animal was from 35 to 50% larger than the type species, Haplocanthosaurus priscus, but it was not until 1988 that the Cleveland specimen was determined to be a distinct species and named Haplocanthosaurus delphsi. Harpymimus okladnikovi. Harpymimus was the earliest and most primitive known ostrich-mimic dinosaur. Relatives of these large, long-legged dinosaurs have been found in both Mongolia and western North America. Ornithomimosaurs had delicate hands with 3 long fingers, and their long-shinned, slender legs probably enabled them to run faster than any other dinosaurs. Ornithomimosaurs also had many features resembling those of the large ground birds of today, including beaks and largely toothless jaws. Harpymimus, however, was an ornithomimosaur with 6 small blunt teeth in front of its jaws. It also had foot bones of uneven length, like toothed theropods, and unlike the later ornithomimids. Thus, it appears to be an important transitional animal between the toothy carnivores which preceded it and the toothless ornithomimids that followed. Because of its teeth, Harpymimus has been placed in its own family, distinct from later ornithomimids. What it ate with those teeth and slim hands is uncertain. Using its speed, it may have trapped and eaten insects and small mammals. It may also have eaten plants and fruits. Herrerasaurus ischigualastensis. Herrerasaurus, a large-jawed carnivore, was one of the earliest dinosaurs. Agile and fleet-footed, it weighed about 180 kilograms. Its jaws were double-hinged, allowing it to grip and swallow large chunks of meat, and its 6-centimeter-long serrated teeth were very sharp. Herrerasaurus had tiny ear bones, suggesting a keen sense of hearing, and long claws. All of these characteristics may have made it an adept hunter of small mammals and dinosaurs. This animal was clearly related to other carnivorous dinosaurs, including Tyrannosaurus rex, which lived 160 million years later. However, Herrerasaurus had many primitive features, such as long first and fifth toes. Herrerasaurus was first collected in 1959 in the Ischigualasto Valley in northwestern Argentina, but the first complete skull, an unusual and well-preserved specimen, was not found until 1988 by University of Chicago paleontologist Paul Sereno in the same area. Creationists, as I was growing up, have to solve for the fewest imaginable distinct kinds of dinosaurs, because they imagine once upon a time 2 of each kind fit onto the same boat together. They must ask themselves if Herrerasaurus is really the same kind of animal as Coelophysis. Is Coelophysis the same kind as Silurus? Is Silurus the same kind as Eoraptor? Is Eoraptor the same kind as Compsognathus? Is Compsognathus the same as Dillong? Creationists imagine that these diverse small theropods all lived together at the same time on the same planet in different areas. But the evidence shows they all lived at different times in the same areas. Heterodontosaurus tucki. Heterodontosaurus was a small primitive dinosaur capable of moving either on all fours or on just its hind legs. It had large eyes above a short face and the unusual assortment of teeth that inspired its name. It had 3 stabbing teeth in the front of its mouth, the third of which was especially large and shaped like a canine tooth, 12 closely set teeth in the upper jaw, grinding molars in the back of its jaw, several ridged teeth, and an upward-pointing canine tooth in each cheek. Its slender hind legs were well suited to fast 2-legged running. It probably used its long tail as a balance during sprints. When Heterodontosaurus was foraging on all fours, it may have adopted a semi-sprawling posture, using its powerful front limbs and large claws to tear up roots or insect nests. Heterodontosaurus was probably a plant eater. Its hands, with their long slender fingers and well-developed claws, may have been used for grasping, tearing, or digging. It may have eaten by using its upper jaw teeth and lower jaw beak to nip off leaves. The tall, closely packed cheek teeth probably worked like scissors, cutting up the food and holding it in fleshy cheek pouches. The large canine tusks may have been used as weapons of defense or in social displays. Huayangosaurus taibii. Huayangosaurus was a small, spiky stegosaur. It is distinguished as the earliest and most primitive and one of the best known of all stegosaurs. Huayangosaurus was adorned with 2 rows of small paired, heart-shaped plates that graded into narrow spikes toward the shoulders. The plates were smaller past the hips and ended halfway down the tail. The tail featured 4 large spines. This design suggests that the large plates in later animals like Stegosaurus derived from spikes. Another primitive feature of Huayangosaurus, in comparison to the later stegosaurs, was the equality of leg lengths between forelimbs and hind limbs. Later stegosaurs had shorter forelimbs in proportion to the hind legs. And whereas later stegosaurs had toothless snouts, Huayangosaurus had 7 teeth on each side of the front of its jaw. This dinosaur was discovered in the rich Dashenpu quarry of Sichuan, central China, in the early 1980s. It was redescribed in 1992, noting previously undocumented features of its skull. These included a small horn near the eye, which appears to have been a sex-linked characteristic. Hypacrosaurus altispinus. Hypacrosaurus was a large duck-billed dinosaur of the hollow-crested or lambeosaurine hadrosaur family. It featured a helmet-like style, a tall narrow crest similar to that of Gryposaurus, though Hypacrosaurus was less rounded. Its skull was short and high, with a narrow muzzle. It had nearly 40 rows of teeth and dental batteries, and a short toothless beak. Aside from its high crest, Hypacrosaurus' other distinguishing feature was its ridged back. This was formed of elongated spines on its vertebrae, which in life were surrounded by muscles or bony tendons to make a hump or fin. Hypsilophodon foxii. This small, fast-moving dinosaur was lightly built and stood low to the ground. With its body held horizontally, it would have measured only a half meter at the hips. Hypsilophodon was one of the early dinosaur discoveries found in 1849 on England's Isle of Wight. Its long fingers and toes led early researchers to speculate that it was a climber, a persistent myth abetted by a scientist's reversal of the proper position of the dinosaur's first toe. Hypsilophodon had sharp, arched hind claws and powerful hind limb muscles. Its tail was long and kept rigid by bony tendons attached to its tail vertebrae. All these features, once interpreted as adaptations for climbing, are in reality suited to fast running. One specimen of Hypsilophodon was discovered with polygonal bony plates nearby, suggesting the animal may have been armored. But in the absence of other more definitive armor finds, that remains only speculation. Iguanodon anglicus. Iguanodon, one of the most famous of all dinosaurs, is best known for its distinctive thumb spikes, which projected at a right angle from its other 4 digits. The spike may have been used to direct tree branches toward Iguanodon's mouth, or to defend it against predators. These stout plant eaters had beaks and powerful tongues to help in cropping and swallowing plants, but no other spikes or horns for defense. Iguanodon is legendary among dinosaurs. It was the second dinosaur ever described. 7 of its well-worn teeth were discovered in Sussex, England in the early 1920s. The familiar, though fictitious story is that they were discovered by Mary Ann Mantell, wife of family doctor and amateur geologist Gideon Mantell. In truth, Mantell purchased gravel from quarries in Tilgate Forest and had it delivered to him so that he could search for teeth and bones which he collected. He described the teeth of Iguanodon in 1822 and credited the discovery to his wife. He considered them correctly to be suited for cutting plants. Iguanodon teeth may have been discovered in Sussex as early as 1808 and also on the Isle of Wight, prior to Mantell's discovery. Leading scientists of Mantell's day, Georges Cuvier and William Buckland, speculated that the teeth were from mammals or fish. Mantell insisted the teeth were reptilian and described them in 1825 as belonging to an extinct 40-foot-long lizard related to the iguana. Less than a decade later, the first bony spike of Iguanodon was discovered in England. It was presumed to have been positioned above the snout. Iguanodon was depicted as a rhinoceros-like creature in the first life-sized reconstructions of dinosaurs, which were made in 1851 for London's Crystal Palace, and still stand in London's Sydenham Park. Iguanodon has now been found in many parts of Europe. The most spectacular find was made 322 meters underground in a coal mine in Bernissart, Belgium, where 24 nearly complete skeletons and several less complete individuals were uncovered in 1878. These were not part of a trapped herd, as was widely reported, but animals that collected over time in a marsh or lake. Jaxartosaurus aralensis. Jaxartosaurus may be an important animal to our understanding of the evolution of duck-billed dinosaurs. It was an average-sized duckbill with a wide, low head. Its skull shows features of both the crested, lambeosaurine duckbills and the crestless, hadrosaurine duckbills. Because the first fossil finds of Jaxartosaurus showed no evidence of a crest, the animal was originally classified as a hadrosaurine. Later finds, however, indicated that Jaxartosaurus had a helmet-shaped crest, somewhat like that of Gryposaurus. The combination of lambeosaurine and hadrosaurine features suggests that the lambeosaurines evolved from the more primitive hadrosaurines, and that Jaxartosaurus may have been one of the earliest of the crested dinosaurs. Kentrosaurus aethiopicus. This spiky late Jurassic stegosaur had a paired row of plates on its neck, small in comparison to those of Stegosaurus and continuing only midway down its back. From its midsection to the tip of its tail, Kentrosaurus sported 8 pairs of tall spikes. Another pair of spikes jutted out over the shoulders. For many decades, these spikes were thought to have projected from the animal's hips. The discovery of an earlier stegosaur with shoulder spikes, Huayangosaurus from China, corrected the error. Kentrosaurus had hoof-like toe claws. It may have weighed more than 1.8 metric tons. It appears to be closely related to a British stegosaur, Lexovosaurus. It was discovered, nearly entire, by German researchers in Tanzania, East Africa, and named in 1915. Creationists, as I was growing up, in order to minimize the number of dinosaurs that they have to imagine on Noah's Ark together, imagined that some dinosaur species had common ancestors, but others did not. They need look no farther than Stegosauridae. If you admit common ancestry between Stegosaurus, Kentrosaurus, and Huayangosaurus, and you think those 3 species evolved in less than 2,000 years, you might as well just admit evolution is true. Well, that takes us from Genyodectes through Kentrosaurus. Next time we will cover from Cryptosaurus through Mutaburrasaurus. I hope you've enjoyed the Softly Spoken Science podcast. Good night.